Live from the 607, it is the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking sports locally and nationally. Why don't you join in the conversation with the hashtag ODPH? Here we go. Welcome to another edition of the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, hashtag ODPH if you're on social media. I am your host, Ken M. Sitting across from me this week is the one, the only, Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
And also joining us in studio, it's your coach, my coach, the coach, Coach Duffy.
What is going on, everybody?
Folks, we have a lot to discuss. Let's waste no more time. Hashtag it up with us if you want to join in the conversation, because, hey, we want to hear from you. The biggest sports story of the week has to be, though, UFC 235.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the return of Jon Jones back to the octagon after his triumphant return.
I'm not going to lie. I kind of forgot this was coming up this quickly, and the turnaround is insane.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, Jon just fought, and now here we are. They're just trying to get as much money as they can, get as many fights as they can from while he's still in his prime.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing about this is, obviously the fight is now in Vegas for this weekend. It's going to be at the T-Mobile Arena. And this is Jon's, comeback trail, obviously. Being the light heavyweight champion now, since Daniel Cormier forfeited the title after his big win against Gustafsson. Now Jon is facing Anthony Smith. This fight is going to be really interesting to watch, but let's break down the card first before we dig into the main event, shall we? Now, on the main event card, there's one fight that is sticking out to me big, and I almost want to say this might be a main event anywhere else.
Okay.
But it's going to be the third fight on the main card, as we were seeing, and that is Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, I would say any other card, that is like a main event fight.
Oh, yeah, without question. But this one is very intriguing on a lot of different levels. If you have not been paying attention, Ben Askren was part of the first, dare I say, MMA trade between one fighting championship and the UFC, with Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson going to one.
That's true.
And then Ben Askren finally coming over to the UFC after Dana White was very public about not having him come over.
Very public, like all capitals, very.
Yes, because Askren is, I'm not saying this is a bad term, but this is just how he is. He's very one-dimensional, and the one thing he's very good at is wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
He gets you on the ground, you don't get up.
Yeah.
He'll do submissions, he's working. His style is not exactly, flashy. I think Dana has even referred to it as boring, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
I could be wrong, but Dana has not had good things to say about it in the past.
Dana was not the biggest fan for a while.
No, definitely not. But you can't deny Askren and his record and what he's done. So now he's finally in the UFC, which he's been killing it on social media and at press conferences. He is must-see TV when it comes to that. And now he has a very, very big task in Robbie Lawler.
So talk about your debut fight in the UFC. Holy crap.
Well, I think this is a perfect fight for him.
Yeah.
Because obviously with Askren coming in, 18-0 record, and obviously fighting a former champion in Robbie Lawler, who is no slouch by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
If you want to see what Askren really has to bring to the table, Lawler is a perfect guy for it. Pat, what's your thoughts on this fight?
I'm very intrigued to see Askren fight. And like you said, the whole build-up to this fight has been incredible because they announced the whole quote-unquote trade or whatever, and he was doing interviews and whatnot, and he goes, I guess this means my boss has to unblock me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Which was a riot to see. But it's going to be very interesting to see because there's a lot of hype following him in. There's a lot of intrigue following him in. Even if you're not the biggest MMA fan, you're kind of like, all right, I remember this name getting thrown around for the quote-unquote trade for Mighty Mouse. Let's see what the guy's got. I think Robbie Lawler is very interested in this fight because he can stand to gain a lot from this fight, even if it's not like super high profile, AAA name. Where if he can, beat Ben Askren, he can knock him out, submit him, whatever. He gains a lot from this fight because, okay, this guy came in, a lot of hype behind him, a lot of, trash talking, and I came in and I whooped him.
Yeah, this one, there's so much going on with this. Coach, you have any feelings on this one?
Yeah, I was watching a lot of the pre-press fights stuff leading up to it, so I'm just looking forward to seeing these two in the octagon. They both weren't like over-the-top trash talk in a way like normal fighters have been, at least in the pressers that I've seen, but it's definitely been like this calm, like, we're going to go in and put in a show.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's what they need to do. I think both fighters, obviously. Lawler has had a very stellar career, and the one thing that's going to be very interesting to see if he can do is if he can pressure Askren and deny enough takedowns to keep the fight standing. Now, this is a tough task no matter who you are.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if he can or not. This is going to be like the telltale of the fight. Because if he can keep it standing, I love his chances to win. If it goes to the ground, Robbie is no slouch in his wrestling.
No.
But Askren, I mean, it's like how Damian Maia is to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Askren is a dominant wrestler. Dare I say, might be the best when it comes to MMA wrestling. Might be. This is debatable. So to see how this fight plays out, I tell you what, I'm really kind of a flip of a coin. My early prediction, though, I do like Askren in this.
Yeah.
I definitely do. I think Robbie is going to definitely have to keep the fight on the feet. If he can, he's going to win this one. I don't know if he's going to knock him out, but he can definitely squeak out a decision. But if this goes to the ground, I think Askren is going to keep him down there.
Oh, yeah.
This is just the one area that he's so well gifted at. And obviously Askren is going to have a lot of eyes on him because if he, let's say he submits Robbie early.
Mm-hmm.
He's justifying the case that he should have been in the UFC a long time ago.
Yeah.
If he gets knocked out, then everybody has said, well, hey, this is why you haven't been in the UFC so long. This is one of those fights that is going to be very telling of where Askren is going to go. Because if he wins, you almost have to wonder, okay, does he go for a title shot? And that also depends on who wins the welterweight title, if he's going to stay at 170.
Doesn't this window need to be more than just a lay down, wrestling style fight for Dana to really feel justified for bringing him over?
Oh, I agree. I think he does. But I think Askren is going to go out of his way to put on a show.
Right.
Because now he has a lot more eyes looking at him from the mainstream UFC audience. So, yeah, no, I fully agree with that he can't just do the whole quote-unquote lay and pray. And I don't think he's going to because I think, one, Lawler will challenge him on the ground. He's not going to be a guy that is going to be very uncomfortable being on the mat. But to see, the chess match that's going to happen there, I just don't know if Lawler can take him in that sense.
Right.
But I think Askren's going to be trying to do submissions left and right. I think he's going to definitely want to make a statement win. And obviously, with Tyrone Woodley is still the champion, they're at the same camp. I don't see that fight happening. So even if Askren wins.
Right.
I'm even going to throw a crazy idea out there because, hey, I like doing that here on the ODPH. I say this. If Askren wins, and then he immediately calls out Habib.
I was thinking you were going to go that way.
Yep. Obviously, the best wrestler in MMA. I mean, like I said, it's debatable between Askren and Habib. Habib is not going to be fighting as we think until November.
Right.
Now, it's a long layoff, so I don't know if Askren would do it. But if they could do a catch weight, say 165, maybe even 160, I don't know, but I think 165 would be even better. If they can do a catch weight, then you have the best of the best wrestlers currently in MMA going at it. And then, who's going to take that one? For me, that fight makes a lot of sense. But depending on how the fight plays out, if Lawler wins, I mean, he's definitely back in title contention. If Askren wins, then you guys kind of go, okay, what's next? Dare I say, Askren can kind of call out a lot of different names.
Right. I mean, he's fighting Robbie Lawler, who, as I look at the UFC's welterweight rankings, Robbie is currently ranked 6th. Ahead of him are Rafael Dos Anjos, Stephen Thompson, Darren Till, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, and, of course, the champ, Tyron Woodley.
Yeah, which Covington, I mean, he's the odd one out here because he's not currently involved in any fights scheduled.
Right.
I think most of the rest of the division there has fights lined up in the next couple weeks. So, obviously, with Askren, if he wins, that would be a great fight to see him against Covington.
Yeah.
Obviously, depending on what's going on there, and there's a whole bunch of drama going on there.
Yep.
And in my opinion, rightfully so, because I think as we're going to go to the next main event, or the next match on the card, Covington has a definite argument that he should be in the next match.
Oh, he's got an argument, absolutely.
Yeah, but before we leave this, who is everybody taking for this fight?
I'm going to have to go Askren just because of the simple fact that his wrestling game is so good, and I just don't think there's any way that Robbie could possibly keep him standing up the entire time.
Coach?
Yeah, I'm going Askren as well.
All right. So as we look to the co-main event, it's Tyrone Woodley, defending welterweight champion, against Kamaru Usman. 14-1, definitely has risen his stock over the last couple fights. And obviously to take Colby Covington, who was the interim champion. Now, who knows?
It is what it is.
Who knows what that situation is? It kind of goes back and forth from all the stuff I've read. In my opinion, he should be the interim champion, and then Woodley should be fighting him. But I'm not mad that Usman has the title shot. it's one of those catch-22s. You know, either fighter would be good to plug in against Woodley. This one, boy, I don't know. This one has a lot going on. Woodley definitely is coming back. He hasn't fought in a little bit. And to see how he's going to match up against Usman, who's been on a roll, an absolute roll lately, is going to be really kind of telling to watch. Pat, you got any feelings on this?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm looking at the records of each of the fighters, and I mean, I'm looking at Kamaru Usman's, who his last loss, and this is no joke, was when he was in CFA back in 2013.
Yeah.
Which is insane. On the flip side, I look at Tyron Woodley, not counting his majority draw at UFC 205 to Stephen Thompson. He hasn't lost since Rory McDonald beat him by unanimous decision way back in 2014. So these are two guys who legitimately haven't lost in a long time. I'm very interested to see this. You know, Woodley, I think, has got the slight edge in this just because he's the champ. He's been there. And, I mean, I'm looking at it, you know, the last couple fights have gone the distance. So, championship fight, five minute rounds, he's got the distance there.
Absolutely. Coach, you got any feelings on this one?
I mean, Woodley's hands are heavy, and I think he's just going to lay lumber. I don't know. To me, I really feel like, especially from watching the press fights, I feel like Woodley's got something right now in his eye that probably hasn't been there in a long time.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I think Woodley is going to come on this fight with a little chip on his shoulder, and rightfully so. I don't think he gets enough credit for his run that he's had as champion of the welterweight division.
Right. I mean, you just look at the list of guys he's beaten. You know, Darren Till, Damian Maia, Stephen Thompson, Robbie Lawler, Kelvin Gastelum, you know, Carlos Condit, Josh Koscheck. It's a name.
Yeah, he's definitely beat some names. I mean, obviously, I think the Condit fight is when Condit did hurt his ACL.
That's true.
And was taken out of that
true.
one.
Yeah, it was a TKO knee injury.
Right. So, but for the majority of those fights, Woodley has definitely shown up and done what he's needed to do. Now, is his style super flashy? Yes and no.
Yeah.
He definitely has knockout power, and he's definitely done that. I mean, obviously, you see the shot he gave Robbie Lawler to get the title.
Ugh.
I mean, to knock out Robbie Lawler, that is a statement.
That's a feather in your cap.
That is something that does not happen every day. So, obviously, him doing that definitely sent some shockwaves throughout that division. And then to see Usman come up and definitely just put on dominant performances. I mean, his last couple fights, Pat.
His last fight was against Rafael Dos Anjos. He won that by unanimous decision. Then before that, it was unanimous decision against Damian Maia. Before that, it was Emil Weber-Meek, Sergio Moraes. So it's definitely some names. I mean, you get a unanimous decision against Rafael Dos Anjos. Whew.
Yeah, Rafael Dos Anjos, I mean, that's a very big resume fight.
And say he won performance of the night for it.
Yeah, and it was a very telling fight because Usman definitely rose up to the occasion. And he's definitely put on those performances that you got to look at it and go, okay, he's definitely in title contention. And obviously being 14-1, you definitely have to put him in there because he's definitely fought some names in that division. So to see him go against Woodley is going to be really kind of telling about if Woodley decides to go to the ground with this or if he decides to stay standing up. I mean, it's a little different style than what's going to be with Askren and Lawler. But Woodley can definitely mix up his shots, though. And obviously, if he can catch a hand on Usman, it's going to be lights out. Usman has to kind of work the angles and keep the distance going. I think if he can outpoint this fight and get the win. But if you're making me make my prediction about this, I'm going to take Woodley by decision. Pat, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Woodley by decision. It's just, you know, he's been on a roll and hasn't lost since he lost by unanimous decision to Rory McDonald way back in 2014, like I said. I just don't see Woodley losing this thing. I could be entirely wrong, and it could be something freak like we saw a couple weeks ago with Cain Velasquez and Francis Ngannou, but I just don't see it.
Coach?
I'm going Woodley knockout third round.
Oh, calling that shot. Rolling those dice. I love hearing that. But, hey, it's going to be a great co-main event, but we have to break down the main event, the one that's bringing everybody to the table. Jon Jones defending the light heavyweight championship against Anthony Lionheart Smith. Now, this one, it seems to be back in full form. Obviously, he's taken care of the whole picogram gate incident, whatever you want to define it as. He's been doing testing. Everything's been coming back A-okay. He's back fighting in Nevada. He's taken on Anthony Lionheart Smith, who has been up and coming in the ranks. This one, boy, I don't know how to go predict this. I know Lionheart is a huge underdog. Mm-hmm. Pat, what you got on this?
This is very interesting to me because we know what we're gonna get with Jon Jones. It's, you know, at this point in his career, he's not exactly going to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You know what you're going to get from him. Anthony Smith is kind of the interesting thing because you look at his last couple fights. His last fight was against Volkan
Ozdemir.
Thank you. Who he defeated by rear naked choke back in 2018. He beat Mauricio Hua by knockout with elbow and punches also in 2018. And he beat Rashad Evans by knockout back at UFC 225 in 2018. So, he's beat some people.
Yeah.
But Jon is just a different animal than any of those guys.
Oh, I fully agree with you. Coach, you got some feelings on this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just, I feel like this fight was kind of just like, hey, Jon's healthy. We need somebody on the card. Let's throw him out here. I'm trying to look up the rankings while we're talking right now, but just to me, it feels like, there probably could have been a better fight.
See, that's the thing is, I've got the rankings here. Jon, of course, is the champion. UFC.com still lists Daniel Cormier as number 1 contender. Number 2 is Alexander Gustafsson. Jon's beat him. 3 is Anthony Smith, who he's facing. 4 is Jan Blachowicz, which, he just fought last weekend on a UFC Fight Night card. After that is Volkan. 6 is Corey Anderson. Then you've got Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes, Ilir Latifi, Jimmy Manawa, Glover Teixeira, Ovin St. Peru, Mauricio Hua, Misha Serkinov, and then Johnny Walker.
And it's funny because Johnny Walker is actually fighting Mika.
Okay.
On the prelim card.
This is true.
So and Johnny's got a lot of hype behind him. Johnny Miller, that is? Johnny Walker, I'm sorry. So, that could be a fight down the road for Jon Jones. But if you look at the division, though, and how he's kind of gone through that.
Yeah, the top 5, he's beaten at least a third of it.
Yeah, we've talked before about how the light heavyweight division has basically been, decimated, and Jon's dominance has had probably something to do with it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if you're a 205 guy, it's very, very easy to go up to 206 and become a heavyweight. So it's almost like, what would you rather pursue? A heavyweight division that's pretty much, obviously DC is the champion right now, but a little bit more wide open than the dominance that has been the last 10 years that's been Jon's division.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Because obviously, like we said, Misha versus Johnny Walker, that's a fight that's happening on the prelim card, but most of the other names in that division Jon has beat.
Right.
Now, he hasn't beat Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith has had some very good knockouts. When he took out Shogun Hua, that was a one for the record books there.
Yeah.
Because he absolutely just tore into him. But obviously, Shogun has had a lot of tread on the tires, so to speak. So to say at this stage, it's still a name, obviously a noteworthy name that he's won. And obviously being Volkan, that was a big name too, because Volkan was another fighter that was on the rise in the light heavyweight division.
Right. Ultimately, this is a fight where Jon, you got to break it down from a UFC. You got to look at it from a business perspective. Jon was healthy. He hasn't fought now in almost 2 years. Comes off of a great performance against Gustafsson, and it's like, hey, we've got a card that we need a main event. Here's Jon. Who can we plug him against? Anthony Smith's ready to go, so let's get him in there.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the wild thing is that we're in February, so February's got an odd number of days, but it's basically literally 2 months to the day since his last fight. His last fight was December 29th, 2018. The turnaround for me is insane, and I think that just speaks to kind of how his camp went and how the fight went for him, where he really wasn't that injured.
Yeah, this is a return on investment. This is them. This is Dana and UFC saying, hey, we need you to fight now. We've invested in you, and now we need to bank on our return here. And it's a smart move from the UFC, and it's a business decision. And Vegas obviously clearly sees it as Jon is the favorite by, the line before was a record high for one fight. So, they're expecting Jon to dominate as well.
Well, the trick with this is going to be, obviously Anthony Smith has got a big task on his plate, and there's no question of that. Has he done enough to get himself a title shot and make it worthy? Absolutely. Can't argue that. He's definitely beat Rashad Evans. He's beaten Shogun Hua. He's beaten Volkan. He's definitely done enough and done it in decisive fashion that, yeah, you got to definitely plug him in there. Now, Jon, obviously, coming off the fight against Gustafsson, we didn't know what we were going to expect when he was coming back against Alexander Gustafsson.
Right.
But his performance in that fight, though, was probably the best performance that he had since, Machado, where it was just him taking away what they're good at and then using it against them almost. Or obviously the DC fights, but those are, a little more controversial. So, we'll just go with the positive of the Machado fight. But it's like Jon will literally just take whatever he's good at and then take that strength and just turn it around and flip it on stuff. That's the Jon Jones that we have right now. He's almost like an artist in there painting a picture.
Yeah, no, obviously before his drama, and time away from the cage early, he was on, obviously comparison to like the Anderson Silvas.
Right.
And, the GOAT conversation. And you can't argue that with Jon. Jon, when he's inside the cage, is a different fighter than most other competition he's had to face.
Yeah.
You can't argue that. For Anthony Smith to win this, he has to do a couple things, in my opinion. One, he has to watch out for Jon's knee push kicks. It's when Jon kicks right in the joint and the knee kind of, hyperextends. It's a legal thing. It's not illegal, but it definitely does damage to his opponents, because where Anthony Smith's strength is going right up the middle, doing his dirty boxing, doing his strikes. We really haven't seen a lot of groundwork per se out of him. So with Jon, I think Jon's going to want to get this to the ground early.
But even to that, Jon still has a 9-inch reach advantage.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, even for Anthony to close the distance, he's still going to be in line. I mean, let's not forget, Jon still has those elbows.
He's got those spinning elbows for days.
Not even just the spinning elbows, but those elbows that he used like hooks that he didn't even use against Gustafsson, because the size advantage was obviously a little more of a wash. But let's not forget those when he was throwing those out against especially smaller fighters with less of a reach.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even throw punches. He would just throw the elbows.
And that's something Smith is going to have to watch out for.
Right. I mean, you bring up the reach difference. Anthony Smith, 76 inches. Jon Jones, it's like 84 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be something that Smith has to definitely find a way to work around if he's going to win this fight. In my opinion, I would like to see Smith win because I think it'd be a great story, but to beat arguably one of the best of all time, I don't see it's going to happen. I really don't. I think that Jon has a game plan worked out to get this fight to the ground.
Oh, for sure.
I think that he does not want to keep this stand-in by any stretch of the imagination. I think if anything, he'll use his reach advantage to definitely keep Smith at a distance before doing a takedown. And then we have to see what kind of ground game Smith has to hold up against Jon's.
If I was Smith, I would almost want to try and push the pace.
Yeah. Well, I think that's his only option.
That's the only thing that somebody really hasn't done to Jon is they let Jon dictate the pace. And, because of his reach advantage, he can be bobbing in and out and keep the distance where he can still reach you, but you can't reach him. But nobody's really pushed it at Jon. So I almost think that might be something that you want to do, especially with, however Jon's cardio is, which we still haven't seen yet, in the later rounds, because obviously Gustafsson went third round?
Yeah. Third round,
yeah.
So a little over 2 minutes in.
Yeah, so that's a normal average fight. So anything past the fourth and fifth round, the championship rounds, pushing the pace might be able to, that's where you can start to slow Jon down.
But I think for Smith, though, he has to beat this before he goes to the fourth round. Because we haven't seen him in those fourth and fifth rounds.
Yeah.
Not saying he couldn't do it, but I think for him, and I completely agree with the coach, he needs the pressure up front and first, and he has to make sure Jon doesn't have that reach advantage going. Is he going to eat some elbows? He's going to eat some punches? Yeah, absolutely, Smith is going to. But if he has a chance to do this, he's got to pressure him and get him pinned against the cage and work some dirty boxing, and don't let Jon get any takedowns. It's easier said than done.
Right.
But I think Jon is ultimately going to pull this one out. It would be a great story, like I said, if Smith could get the win, but I think Jon is going to ultimately defend his belt. Where does he go from here? That becomes the next question.
I mean, is there anywhere to go? Bellator to fight Ryan Bader? I mean,
I would love to do a cross-promotion thing with that. I would love to see that.
I mean, what do you do with a guy that is literally owned something this long?
The only thing that they have done, because this kind of brings me up to something I was going to touch upon in rounding the bases, is like when GSP was on his dominant run, and they went out and they got Jake Shields, and they brought him into the UFC just to fight GSP.
Right.
I mean, I'm just looking at the rankings. I've said before, you had UFC Fight Night just this past weekend where it was Thiago Santos versus Jan Blachowicz in the light heavyweight division. Thiago Santos won via TKO and punches in the third round. I mean, so therefore Thiago Santos you would think would be the next contender, but I'm sorry, that doesn't seem to put butts in the seats.
Not just yet. I think Santos needs one more fight before that happens.
Right.
He's definitely come back, and he's definitely risen in the ranks lately. And obviously it was a great performance over, I believe it was UFC Prague, that he won against Jan. So to see what happens there, for Jon, it's a tough slope because you could have like a Luke Rockhold jump up.
Right.
Because obviously he's talked about fighting at 205. I don't know if the UFC would just automatically bump somebody up and do that, even though Rockhold is a former middleweight champion.
Right.
And would you have somebody step down from heavyweight to fight Jon at 205? That would be another question.
That's a big cut for some of those boys.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if that would necessarily happen. And for Jon, would he want to vacate and move up to heavyweight? That's another option. Because, which I don't see him doing. I see him doing what Anderson Silva did. Stay at his division, be the most dominant fighter at that one, make fighters come to you, and obviously until he gets his big money fight with either Brock Lesnar or if he's going to do him and Cormier 3.
You know it's coming, Ken. You know it's coming.
I know it's coming. And like you can hear the dread in my voice about this. I don't want to see it. I mean, will I watch it? Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment. But I have no excitement about this. Because unless this fight is going to be at heavyweight, we've already seen how it's going to play out. And I'm sorry, Daniel Cormier I really like as a fighter. I don't think he can beat Jon at light heavyweight. Maybe at heavyweight I think he's got a very good shot at it. A very good shot. And in fact, the fight I would love to see if Jon would want to step up to heavyweight is him versus Cain Velasquez. If Cain is healthy, depending on whatever happened with his knee. I don't care what happened against Francis Ngannou. If Cain is healthy enough to fight and Jon wants to step up and do a heavyweight fight to kind of test the waters, that's the best one to do. If he wins that, then you want to do that dream match against Cormier at heavyweight, go right ahead. I got no issue with that. But as for light heavyweight contenders after this, it's going to be hard to say. I mean, Santos is definitely a name up there. Like I said, Rockhold. Or if somebody else wants to leave 185 and jump up to 205, I mean, we've seen fighters do that. I mean, right now they're actually doing the interim lightweight title with Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier. So Holloway is coming up from 145 to 155. So it's not unheard of to do this. Will it happen? Remains to be seen. But it's going to be a hell of a fight card. UFC 235 this weekend. Check it out where you can check it out. You've heard our predictions, but we want to know yours. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward, no steps back.
Hey, this is Vince the Common Man Ciatoy, local MMA fighter, telling you to keep on listening to the ODPH, the 607's up-and-coming newest podcast.
We knew right where we'd be, floating on the airwaves, you see. It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward and no steps back. We knew right where we'd be.
Coming back for segment number 2 on this week's ODPH. And Coach, we got to talk some basketball.
There's a lot going on. I mean, I know we were just off air here discussing what's going first, but let's start with Zion Williamson and Duke.
Yes.
All right. We haven't gotten to touch on this. Yeah, we haven't gotten to touch on Shoegate yet. The game was Wednesday and we recorded on Monday. So, all right. I have an interesting take on this, and it's been because we've had so much time to kind of weigh everybody's opinions and everything. So if you haven't seen, obviously, North Carolina Duke, at Duke, Zion Williamson dribbling into the paint, stops to make a cut, basically slips, blows out his shoe, his Nike Paul George's threes, and goes down with a sprained knee, which he's still hurt, not going to play tonight, didn't play against Syracuse.
But they still won against Syracuse. Now, so a lot of people obviously were killing Coach K with this game because, they all boo-hoo, they still have 3, All-Americans that, they still couldn't come out and beat North Carolina. I mean, let's just talk about the fact that Zion Williamson's usage rating is the highest in the nation and the highest ever in NCAA history. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's stupid. So, for him to come up with a game plan to try and circumvent losing Zion Williamson, is difficult. Now, the controversy, though, is the idea of should high school players now be able to go back to the draft? Because what if Zion would have torn his ACL?
That's a good question.
What would have happened there? I mean, you heard that he has this $12 million insurance policy if he falls out of the top 5. But it's like, is that really going to justify, not allowing these players, especially with somebody like Zion, who out of high school was 6'7", 285 pounds. He was basically built like LeBron. Is it fair to say, okay, now you're forced to go to college and have to play one and done? And that's now the drama that's coming out of this.
This is a very highly debated question. And for me, I am still okay with them going and playing 1 year of Division I basketball. For me, unless they're going to go right to the G League and do that. But coming right out of high school, I mean, what's the success rate from players that came right out from high school and gone right to the pros? And been successful.
It's really probably a 50-50 split.
Right. So at least if they're going to college, there is a chance that, I mean, obviously everybody kind of leaves after the 1 year. I get that. But at least there you kind of get the feel of what it's going to be like. I mean, obviously you're not a pro, but you're playing against top-level competition. It's a lot different than the high schools you've been in.
I feel like also when you factor in that 1 year of college, like you'll have a lot of kids who want to come out of high school and go straight to the NBA. Like, I'm, the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm the best player since Michael Jordan. Forget LeBron, forget Kobe. I'm better than them. And you'll have those guys who talk that. And in some instances, yeah, they might actually be as good, if not better, than LeBron or Kobe. But in other instances, that other 50%, they'll be average at best, if not lower than average. And I feel like the good thing with college is you can kind of weed through that and find, okay, these are the legit good, lottery draft picks. And these are the guys that, we'll sign to a 10-day contract if we got an injured player and can't play him.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you, Pat, because I think that kind of gives more of a litmus test of what you got when you're coming out there. Because, I mean, it all depends on where you play in high school, and obviously there's a bunch of different factors going into it. Because, I mean, you look at, like, when LeBron came out, or you look at when Kevin Garnett came out. I mean, how many times do we have a superstar come out of high school and play at such a high elite level? I mean, like you said, Coach, it's about 50-50. So, I mean, for me, unless they went right to the G League, I still struggle with just coming right out of high school to the pros.
Yeah, I mean, so this is where my opinion has changed personally from everything that happened. Zion, as a basketball player and really as a person, was really coming out of high school just known as the dunking kid.
Mm-hmm.
His game now has transformed and transcended itself.
Oh, yeah.
Where he now is this all-being force in the paint. And all that changed once he got to Duke because he was able to get into a system that was able to show and use his skill set the proper way. Had he gone right into the NBA, he still would have been known just as the guy who can dunk and probably, the 12th man on a 13-man roster. Not to mention the fact that now he is almost, like I said, transcended. It's almost like an urban legend now with Zion. The way that the Shoegate, and then the picture of him grabbing the loose ball with the Louisville player and literally almost popping it with his hand. I mean, squeezing the ball pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, those are things that have now made him more marketable.
Oh, I fully agree with you.
And in turn, with that marketability, has now made him, when he comes into the draft, probably one of the most sought-after, quote-unquote, shoe free agents in all of the draft coming up this year.
Oh, yeah. His stock has risen so much because, like you said, when he first came out, everybody was known from, his Instagram videos or was it YouTube? Anyway, about his amazing dunks. And now you're seeing what he's fully capable of. And I think it's also a testament to seeing how well he plays against the top competition in the country.
Right.
Because, obviously, you don't get that much experience, depending on where you play, to really travel, and you really see everybody that's top level throughout the country.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, him being in Duke and with Krzyzewski, yeah, okay, the controversy, pay players, and Coach K making so much money, but Zion, when he leaves, is going to make that much money. Yeah, 1 year of, the dangers of what if, but that what if has now transcended him into this player where, now people are looking at him like, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, they're all going to throw trucks. Trucks are going to back up full of money to try and get him to sign their shoe deal just because of the infamy that he is right now. And the other person that this helps, and I don't think people are quite realizing this, RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Has now, he reclassified to come into this class, right? And everybody, RJ Barrett's going to be the number one pick in the draft. And then Zion obviously had his ascension. But now that he's out and RJ, now Barrett's getting the usage level that he was, especially in the Syracuse game.
Yeah, where he dropped, 30 on him?
Dropped 30. And it was the same position that Zion would have been in the 2-3, being in the high post. But it showed RJ's efficiency because, I mean, his shooting percentage that game was above 50%, which is amazing. And that was looks that he wasn't getting before because Zion was in that role. So now RJ Barrett, now you're going into this draft class, this next year with the draft. And if you're the Knicks at 1 or Phoenix, is RJ Barrett just as good as Zion is?
Yeah, this year's draft is going to be very interesting to watch for the NBA because you're hearing about teams quote unquote tanking to get up to the high level pick, even though it's done by the whole lottery ball system. So I mean that's a whole different subject. But obviously it's due to the fact of the talent that's coming into this year's draft. And obviously, I mean, at least in my opinion, the fact that those players are actually in D1 playing against the top level competition from all around the nation, all around the world. This is where they get to shine, and you really see what you're getting as a team.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative is what? Stick them in the G League?
Well, even there, you at least they'll get some exposure because it is NBA players, former players there, or ones that are just, on the outside looking in, so to speak.
Right, but what is that exposure, though? I mean, Facebook Live, some games on NBA TV.
I'll say I know Yes Network here in the tri-state area of New York shows Brooklyn Nets G League games. Whatever their affiliate is. Like I know I'm flipping channels sometimes and I'll say like, what the heck? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and MSG does the same for the Knicks affiliate. But it's like, so okay, let's just say RJ Barrett, doesn't reclassify, he ends up going into the G League. LaMelo Ball is a perfect example, okay, because obviously not college eligible. Here he goes into the G League. So who's to say what team he can be affiliated to? Because all right, let's say he goes to the Westchester Knicks. Now the Knicks are going to have full advantage because they're going to know medical. They're going to know, all those underlying things that teams looking to draft a guy look to get. So they're almost having a leg up in scouting because now the guy's in their system. Not to mention the fact that, what if Westchester runs a similar offense as the Knicks? They'll be able to plug and play and kind of go from there. So it almost gives a disadvantage to the other, 31 NBA teams to say, hey, we're going to put this guy on your team. So that's the other aspect of the G League thing that you got to kind of think about because it's unfair to stick him on some team.
It could be, but for me, though, I look at it just and said, for my opinion is, like, obviously, what I would say is if a player is leaving high school, goes right to D1, but if they're not, I don't want to put them right in the NBA out of the gate. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think the G League is perfectly fine if they don't want to go play D1, at least go there first. See, that, like, for me, I don't struggle with that.
Maybe form a team that is like in the G League that's just an unaffiliated team that's just owned by and operated by the NBA.
I mean, that could be a definite option. But like I said, for my point, though, is just coming straight out of high school and going to the NBA to be that kind of superstar caliber where you have a long career and longevity. I don't personally see it. I mean, you have cases where, it's justified, absolutely. You had LeBron, you had Kevin Garnett. There are certain cases where, these players will leave right out of high school and become superstars.
Right.
But you also have cases where, obviously, that doesn't happen. And then what goes from there?
Yeah, they phase out and then they're done. No, I completely agree. That's why the one and done, it's kind of just a 50-50. Now, I mean, you bring up a guy that was transcended that could handle that in LeBron, and he's got his own headache to deal with right now.
That he does.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the Lakers, as we touched upon a little bit last week, are currently outside the playoff race looking in.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, they're 1-4 in their last 5.
And 2 bad road losses against 2 bad teams.
Yeah.
So, Coach, let me ask you this. What do you think is going on with the Lakers?
What I think is going on is LeBron has alienated his teammates.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that LeBron's not realizing that at, his age of, 30s or 31, whatever, I don't think he's realized that these kids are much more fragile than he was coming out. And the age gap is real. And he's got kids... Lonzo, Kuzma, these kids, they're only, Brandon Ingram, they're all under 24 years old.
Yeah. This is something, though, when he left Cleveland and he went to L.A., he had to know he was going to have a very young, not seasoned team, and he was going to inherit and have to make something, have to really kind of make him his own team.
Right, but he also acknowledged the fact that it wasn't going to be success out the gate. That's why he signed the 4-year deal.
Exactly.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And
Like it's like, oh, I'm not expecting success out the gate. That's why I signed the deal I signed. Oh, by the way, I want to win a championship right now.
Oh, I fully agree with you, but I think now it's kind of you seeing where LeBron is so used to being, in a playoff position at this stage in the season, and now it's not happening, that it's kind of uncharted water for him.
I was just going to say, I think that LeBron saw, the talent and the prospects that were there, the potential that was there. And then slowly that potential started to fade. And then the reality hit of, we might not even, before probably projected 6th, 7th seed, and now the reality setting in. And I think LeBron saw that, especially when he went down for that stretch, in mid December into January, and saw the way the play of the Lakers were, and realized quick, I'm going to need some help here before I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
And then that's when, the proverbial poo hit the fan.
Yeah, and obviously with the whole Anthony Davis, fiasco of, is he coming, is he not, who's staying, who's
Send
going.
everybody.
They're including their mothers, wives, and children.
Yeah, I mean, it was just wild about everything that was involved in just that media circus, and that's the easiest way you can describe it. That obviously now it didn't come to fruition. Where do you go from here? And obviously they've been having some bad losses. Like I said, I think they were, 1-4 in their last 5, and some very, very bad losses.
You know who's justified in all this now? Kevin Durant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who literally said, I don't want to play with LeBron because he alienates people.
Yeah, he alienated that entire team, because any sport, when there are trade rumors, reporters will ask, because that's their job. They have to write the article to put in the paper, on the website, whatever it is, to make a paycheck. They will ask, oh, there are rumors that you're going to get traded. What do you think about it? And every player, I don't care what league it is, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, you ask a player about, oh, there are rumors you're going to get traded. What do you think? Oh, I don't pay attention to that. I just focus on the next game and playing well and getting whatever it is. Touchdowns, home runs, hits, steals, points, whatever. They're always going to say that. But we know full well that they're very aware of that.
Oh, of course.
They're fully aware of what's going on and what's being said and what's being rumored and what's being reported. And if you are there just trying to ball out and play out and help your team win, and you're giving it your 110%, you're giving it everything you got, and your team leader is sitting there going, yeah, I want Anthony Davis, and you go, okay, that makes sense. And then you read online, oh, you're being offered in a package for Anthony Davis when you're busting your you-know-what for this guy. Why would you want to play for him?
It's a very tricky thing, dealing with professional sports. Is obviously when you have the superstar players such as LeBron, and obviously, whatever blew up out of the Anthony Davis talk.
Right.
Obviously, the end result is it didn't happen. So it's going to be, okay, where do we go from here? And obviously, there's going to be a lot of mixed feelings about it from his teammates. If he has, quote unquote, alienated everybody, then what do you do now to finish out the season? You got some more games to go. Playoff seeds are not finalized just yet. If you don't make the playoffs this year, I fully believe there's going to be massive changes from top to bottom with the Laker team that you see currently right now.
Well, to me, it goes back to when Magic put this roster together. Luke Walton and Magic and the upper management, and plus probably LeBron, all sat trying to come up with this roster, and they signed those veteran guys that they got, the Rondos, the Lance Stevenson, and the idea was LeBron's played with shooters before, and we've seen the results, and we know what that is. Let's try and put a bunch of ball handlers around him where LeBron doesn't need to be the man as far as like bringing the ball up, initiating the offense, and let's get guys who can make plays and then get LeBron open. Ultimately, though, it hasn't worked, and they've had to revert back to the same old LeBron initiate the offense and let him, be the playmaker, but now they don't have the shooters around him.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, because they have to find a way to make this work. Otherwise, the rest of the season's the wash.
Well, I think at this point it is a wash. I don't see how they can reinvent themselves when there's just not, they were hoping that the buyout market was going to be a little bit better, but other teams, Toronto, Oklahoma City, they all put themselves in position to swoop in and get some of these guys who got bought out. And at the end of the day, the guys who got bought out really weren't, wanting to go to LA. I mean, Wes Matthews was somebody who got bought out by the Knicks, was looking to go to Philly, or Los Angeles, ultimately signed in Indiana after Oladipo went down. Then, Marquise Morris burned him and went to Oklahoma City, which, or Markieff Morris burned them and went to Oklahoma City, which really killed them. So now, you sign Mike Scott, great. And then, you let Beasley go, who was another shooting playmaker. And it's like, what do you got left on your roster? And here's Carmelo, who's still right now technically signed with Houston, but is a going to be bought out here at some point or released. Is that really the answer for Los Angeles?
Short term, maybe. Long term, no.
It's not even short term. Carmelo right now, as much as I love him and would love to see him, go back as a Knick, his game is not built for today's NBA.
No,
it's the game, unfortunately, and it's not any.
It's
not any fault of him. It's just where the game's revolutionized. I mean, for him, he needs to be almost like a Draymond Green, a defensive four who can hit the outside shot and maybe make a play every once in a while, bring the ball up, and he just doesn't have that skill set.
No, I mean, this is just going to be a situation moving forward that for the Lakers, I mean, to see how the season is just deteriorated. And, I mean, there really is no kind of clear-cut sign it's going to get better. I mean, until the offseason, because I think the offseason, you're going to see some big moves get made.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have to, or Magic's going to lose his job.
Well, yeah. It's ultimately boiled down to this, because if LeBron doesn't make the playoffs, I fully suspect there'll be a complete turnover of that roster.
Yeah, I mean, the thing of it is had the Anthony Davis thing not happened or been a little more secretive, and it didn't get as public as it ended up being, I think if, circumstances still the same, obviously that not being as public as it ended up being, if they didn't make the playoffs, it would have been, okay, that was to be expected. You've got a guy who's, very much a veteran, balling with some, young players. They weren't really expected to make the playoffs, if they weren't going to make it far. But I think because it's as public as it is, and it's as messy as it is, and it's as, TV drama as it's become, for the time, it's going to be very glaring and very like everyone's going to look at it. Now, they're obviously not going to get that far in the playoffs. Even if they make the 8 seed, they're fodder for the Golden State Warriors high 4-game sweep. Thanks for playing. But I think that it'll all depend on what they do next year, because if they play next year and they make the playoffs, and they don't necessarily have to win a title, but if they make a run in the playoffs and they get out of the first round, I think everyone will forget all about this year.
Well, I think the next year's team is just going to be so different that this year is just going to be a faded memory.
So this is what I think about, though, when I hear that is, what if they don't? What if they don't? What if they can't fix this shit because things are so venomous? The Knicks obviously are in position. The Clippers are in a position to go after some free agents. What if the Lakers don't?
See, for me, and maybe this is just the old school mentality of me, that when you get to the NBA, there's certain markets that just gravitate for players no matter what.
Sure.
New York is one. That's why I said Kevin Durant is going there. You heard it here first. My unofficial ODPH opinion. New York is one. LA is another.
We'll say the LA Lakers are to the NBA what the New York Yankees are to Major League Baseball. Now, any player in Major League Baseball who says they don't want to play for the New York Yankees is kidding themselves. They may not say it publicly, but in the back of their head, they're probably thinking it or they've thought it. The Lakers are in the same conversation.
Oh, I get it. I understand. I mean, when I play 2K and I get drafted by anybody besides the Knicks or the Lakers or the Bulls or somebody that I grew up, with, an affiliation with that team, I get upset, but it's not the same generation.
Oh, I get you, but what my point is with this is I think that there will be some players that see LA as the destination. Now, whether it's the Clippers or the Lakers,
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
But for me, I could see them getting at least one mega superstar there with LeBron. I'm not saying they're going to get, the key that's going to make them the new dynasty for the next 3 years.
I'll say they're not going to become, an NBA 2K roster with like budgets turned off.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, when you look at it, and you're an NBA free agent right now, and you see the way that this played out in Los Angeles. So what if you do go to the Lakers and all of a sudden stuff doesn't work with LeBron? What's going to happen next? Is he going to ask for you to get traded just so he can try and right the ship and try and correct that legacy? And now you're the odd man out after you signed this 4-year deal?
Well, I think that's what you're not going to see a long-term deal for anybody that signs.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
No, like I said, I think you're going to have somebody that comes because it's the Lakers, because it's the brand.
Yeah,
You're going to have somebody come there. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying it's going to be Anthony Davis, but you'll have a superstar player to balance out LeBron. Now, whether it's going to be the one, like I said, to compete with Golden State. No, I mean it could be Klay Thompson that comes there.
So my counterpoint to that though is look at the Bulls. The Bulls were the same position. They were a team that had a legacy and this stigma around them of championships and everything, and now they can't get anybody to come there because the ghost of Jordan is still there. Now Derrick Rose embraced it and tried, but ultimately at the end of the day, the injuries that they kind of led way, and he just couldn't do it on his own anymore. But nobody else has even tried to pursue that as far as that goes. I mean, God, the Knicks are still feeling that from the Ewing era. Everybody's scared to go to New York because of not only the media, but just the overall pressure that comes with New York.
Well, I think it's for the Knicks especially, it's not only just the pressure and kind of the gravitas that comes with playing for the New York Knicks. I think it's a lot of years of mismanagement.
That too, yeah, sure.
Yeah, you got to look at the whole
That
picture
too,
with that.
sure. But I mean, still though, so many guys have come and gone and burned the Knicks as far as free agency that were like, oh yeah, they're going to go there to correct the ship. But ultimately they chose otherwise. I can see, honestly, like a Kawhi, who's a quiet reserve kind of guy. I see him going, like, if he does leave Toronto, why not go to the Clippers and build your own legacy?
No, that's why I say you might have somebody, and like I said, they'll get a complimentary player to LeBron. Like I said,
sure, yeah.
For me, I could see Klay Thompson going there. Because do I see Klay and LeBron becoming the new dynasty? No, I don't. I think they're going to need maybe one other player to help them out.
And I can see Klay going there just because his dad obviously played there as well.
Right, that's why I said
yeah.
I could see if anybody's going there, it's him. But like what I say is he going to be the one to get him over the hump? No, I don't think he is. But for anybody going there, you have to know what you're going to go into. And you obviously, it's going to be a lot on some players' minds. That's why I could say you might see some players sign for 1 or 2 years. You're not going to see a long max deal.
No, if I was a free agent, I wouldn't do it.
No, I definitely wouldn't. I would kind of sit there. I mean, it all depends on where I wanted to go first. And I'm taking the fan out of me because obviously I'd say New York.
Right. Yeah, sure. Hey, I hear you.
Book my locker already. But I think it all depends on where the market is. And then if you want to go to that media circus, because it's not just L.A., it's whatever's going on with LeBron, and can you mesh with him and play and put wins on the court?
Now that's where your Klay Thompson makes sense because he can and would.
Yeah,
he would be. Oh man, that would be beautiful.
Yeah.
That would be nice basketball.
Yeah, like I said, I could definitely see him going there, and that's who I think goes there. But is he the one to get him over the hump for championships? No.
Oh, I mean, you got to think though too. Now in that scenario though, I mean, you just decimated the Golden State dynasty because now Klay's gone, KD's gone, so that might actually be what gets him over the hump.
I see Golden State going down, but I see Oklahoma City on the rise.
Whew, they are scary good.
That's the difference.
How about, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but that Paul George runner, the boongazas on that man to put that shot up, my God, that thing was 20 feet in the air, and I mean literally, that is not a shot you practice.
No, that
like
definitely
he
is not.
threw that up because he's like, oh, there's like 1.2 seconds on. Heave it.
So let me ask you this because I know we're definitely going overtime here. MVP race.
Oh God! Right now,
who do you take?
Gun to your head.
I'm leaning James Harden right now just because I see them making it in the playoffs, and I think that 30-point stretch will carry him over it. But if they fall short anywhere from like below the 4 seed and OKC rises, it's definitely got to be Paul George.
Pat?
Paul George, just something about him and the way he's been playing lately.
I would say this. For me, it's a 2-player race with Giannis and Paul George.
Oh, see, Giannis, yeah, but I think they'll give it to Paul George only because of, James Harden, only because of the overall, exposure that he gets being in that major market of Houston. But Giannis, I could definitely see getting like a defensive player of the year, like getting that like, hey, you did really, really well this year, but James Harden's going to beat you for the MVP just because everybody talks about his beard.
Yeah.
We'll give you defensive player of the year because we like you.
It's going to be something to watch, but I don't think, like, to tie it back in with the segment, I don't think LeBron will be there. And this year, obviously, I think the Lakers are in a lot of trouble. Off-season,
Watch him make first team NBA out of nowhere, though.
Probably. But I could definitely see this year is definitely a wash for the Lakers because I think they're not going to get to the playoffs. Where that leads to the draft and maybe just a freak chance they might get a shot at Zion if the Knicks don't, that could definitely happen too.
Well, I think their pick is owned by Philly.
Okay.
I think, yeah, from that Lonzo trade.
Oh, all right. So, I mean, that being said, they're going to have to do some work in the draft. But I think all eyes are going to be turned into the draft. And like we were saying about earlier, I think the exposure that the high school players get when they go to D1 definitely helps their game out. For Zion, it's done wonders, like you said. And I fully agree that I think getting that exposure, playing against that top competition, and the right system to bring that element of the game out of the player can only help and do wonders. And I know with Zion being down, R.J. Barrett's been the one to step up and take the role. And obviously his stock is going to rise now.
30 points against Virginia Tech tonight. You heard it.
Mark the tape, folks. And to see where they go from the dance from here is going to be something because obviously the next step is going to the NBA.
Now he goes 1 for 7.
you just jinxed it. As long as they bring home the chip at the end of March.
Yeah. Say if you're a Duke fan and they lose tonight, you can blame Coach.
Yeah, hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. We kind of did a deep dive into some basketball news, but what's your thoughts on Zion's situation with Duke? What's your thoughts on the one and done? What is your thoughts on the Lake Show right now? Are you a fan of it? Are you not? Where do you see the chips falling next season? Or are you with us and just saying everybody's going to quit now because Durant's coming to the Knicks with Kyrie? We want to know. Hit us up on that.
And Zion, let's go.
Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brian Wolf from Fair City Fire. You are listening to ODPH, the greatest podcast in Binghamton.
Woo!
Hot lips touching, cool thighs feeling, shudder running up, her spine spinning. Long day to a long night, but I'm not stopping till I get it right.
Coming back for the final segment on this week's ODPH. Pat, kick us off with that local minute.
Well, of course, local minute, we got to talk a little Binghamton Devils news. This past week, they had 2 home games, one being Friday against the Bellevue Senators, where they lost in a 5-3 game on. That was a tough loss for them.
Yeah, to say the least.
Ken and I were both at the game. Got to give a little bit of credit to Bellevue and their offense because there were a couple shots where the goalie, the Binghamton goalie, was screened. Bellevue shot the puck, and he had no idea anything had happened until the arena horn went off.
Yeah, Belleville played amazing offense and doing their screens. Like, they were getting a lot of shots on goal that just the B Devils just didn't have a lot of reaction time to.
I'll say there was. I know you brought up, at least when we were watching the game, there were at least 2 goals where like they shot the puck, it hit the net, and he didn't even move. And he didn't move, like I said, until the horn went off.
Yeah, it was just one of those situations that Belleville was clicking at the right time, and just their screens were just amazing that night.
Yeah.
So nothing you could do about that on the B Devil side.
No, but they bounced back Saturday night against the Utica Comets, winning 4-1. I went to that game as well. That was a scrappy game because for the longest time it was 2-1, and it was 2-1 late into the third period, and then they rattled off a couple of goals to really pull ahead and win it. So great win for them. Looking ahead to games this week, they have a home game this Tuesday, February 26th against the Syracuse Crunch, and then they travel on the road to play the Checkers on Friday at 7 p.m., and then again they play the Checkers on Saturday, March 2nd, game time 6 o'clock for that. More information, binghamtondevils.com.
And now we got to talk some Binghamton Bulldogs.
Oh, boy.
Speaking of Cuse going down.
Twice.
Oh, this was a game. I was in attendance with Nostradogmus and some other friends. The dog pound, like, I can't even utter this. I'm trying to remain calm because I'm trying to be a nice, cool, calm, professional podcaster, but it's going out the window. The dog pound was standing room only for
Good
this.
for them.
This was a wild scene.
I was watching it from the stream that they had on Facebook, and it looked nuts.
It definitely was. And it was back and forth early between Binghamton and Syracuse. One thing I know as Syracuse was doing is they were driving with no fear. Chris Cartwright was going straight up to the hoop, and they were taking a lot of fouls. They were getting Syracuse in trouble early.
Which is smart.
Which was brilliant. I love the changes that they did.
So I preached to my CYO team all year is you got to get to the line. If you're not making jump shots, you got to get to the line.
Yeah, and it was definitely a physical game, and Binghamton was winning the rebound game. They were definitely getting in, definitely taking advantage of Syracuse missed shots and converting them for points. And then the second quarter happened, and Binghamton got clicking. And
they went on that run.
And Johnny Marsh, shout out to you, sir. Love the energy he brought on the court. He's a brand new addition to the Bulldogs. He was nailing shots. He was getting the crowd involved. And before you knew it, the Dogs were running on Syracuse.
Signed from Rock City, too, which is always a Binghamton, gives them fits.
Yes.
High energy guy.
Huge addition. Love the energy he brought to the court. And so Binghamton was up at halftime, and this was when Syracuse started making a little bit of a comeback. But Binghamton held on. Chris Cartwright was leading the squad, and everybody was having, if they could not have played a more perfect game than they did, I can't even put it into words. Binghamton matched them blow for blow and was hitting them with combos. That is the easiest way to do it and describe it. I mean, if you look at the stat sheet for it, it was impressive. Chris Cartwright had 35. Johnny Marsh had 29. Moni Anderson was draining threes for 25. And the Dogs pulled out the upset over that number 1 ranked Syracuse Stallions, 150 to 115, with Chris Cartwright being the Rocco J. Testani player of the game.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge. That's a big win for the Bulldogs.
Huge.
Obviously, going into the last 3 games of the season here. I mean, you're looking at the ABA selection committee now having to divvy out playoff positions, and it's like they just beat the number 1 team in the nation that was undefeated before. So Bulldogs looking pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they could not have looked any better that night. And they were nailing shots. The crowd was into it. It was definitely now I know it's kind of getting joked about on social media, but we officially have a rival now.
I'd say so.
Yeah, I mean, before it was kind of like, the Rock City's there, and Elmira's there, but, when you beat teams by like 50, it's like that's not really a rivalry. And now, obviously, with the back and forth with Cuse, yeah, this is great, man.
It was a great game to be at. Shout out to Jimmy Evans and company there. Top shelf operation going on with the Binghamton Bulldogs. It was just to be there in person. And like I said, I went with about 3 fans that had never been to a Bulldogs game before. And they were like, does this happen all the time? I'm like, yes. The intensity, the action in the games, yes. Do we win all the time? Yes and no, because we have 5 losses on the season. But the effort and just the overall team play by the Bulldogs, shout out to you guys for that. And then they came back the next night and defeated Lehigh Valley 145 to 112 with Derek Hart scoring 35 in the win.
Now, this is without Jimmy Gray right now, too.
Yes, this is without Jimmy Gray and I believe Joel Patch, too.
Yeah.
So at least Joel was out on the Syracuse game. I don't know about what happened with Lehigh. But either way, going into the final game of the season, which will be this Friday against Elmira, we also have to give another shout-out to Chris Cartwright, who was named ABA First Team.
Yeah,
good for him.
So shout-out to you, Chris. And for more information on the Binghamton Bulldogs, if you're not familiar, get familiar before we start talking playoffs here. Yes, playoffs.
We're talking about playoffs?
BinghamtonBulldogs.com, or check them out on Facebook, too. Show them some love. Definitely, congratulations, guys. Huge win this weekend. Keep it up, and let's keep that streak going to St. Louis. That's all I got for the local minute, but let's start rounding those bases. Pat, you want to kick us off?
Oh, we're going to round the bases literally because spring training is in full effect. Games are on TV. Players are playing, and I am a happy gentleman. First, got to talk about my Yankees because they did sign Aaron Hicks to a 7-year, $70 million contract. It should be noted, there is a club option in 2026, which includes a $1 million buyout, and there is a trade assignment bonus of $1 million. Basically, what that means is if at any point the Yankees trade him to any team, he gets $1 million from them. To me, this makes all the sense in the world when you look at the fact this effectively takes him out of the Bryce Harper sweepstakes, which I'll get to in a minute. But this makes all the sense in the world to me because you have Giancarlo Stanton locked up for a number of years. They're going to work on Aaron Judge if they're not working on him already. You got Aaron Hicks locked up. There's your outfield. Brett Gardner, yes, he is still on the team. Yes, he is still under contract. He probably won't play every day, but let's face it, the bulk of his years are behind him than ahead of him. This, to me, is your outfield for the next, half decade or more. So it makes all the sense in the world to me to re-sign him. Of course, the biggest news for baseball signings last week was Manny Machado finally made his decision, and whoa boy, did he ever, shocking everyone, signing a 10-year, $300 million deal with the San Diego Padres. Now, it should be noted there is an opt-out available to him after the 2023 season, and there is a 6-team no-trade clause. No details on what teams are on that clause, but there are 6 teams that he will flat out not take a trade to. So that's the interesting one. So that kind of sets one benchmark for Bryce Harper. The other one coming down today in the Colorado Rockies signing star third baseman Nolan Arenado to an 8-year, $260 million deal.
Wow.
The average salary is $32.5 million a year, making him the highest paid position player in baseball. Should be noted with him, there is a player opt-out after 2021, and there is a full no-trade clause in this gentleman's contract, meaning he ain't going nowhere unless he waives it. So, excuse me. So, why do I bring up Nolan Arenado and Manny Machado? Well, because it should be noted, Bryce Harper's agent is Scott Boras. And if anybody knows anything about Scott Boras, he likes to have all the records, including the worst timing for announcing I'm becoming a free agent in Alex Rodriguez. Game whatever the World Series. So he likes to have all the records, highest this, highest that. Well, so currently the running report from John Heyman is that the Phillies offer is 10 years and more than $300 million. So it's more than what Manny Machado got. Also in the mix are both the LA Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants. Now, the more and more this sits, the more and more I think he really doesn't want to go to Philly. Because if it's more than what Manny Machado got with the Padres, what's the holdup? And by contrast, it's been reported that Dodgers ownership and manager Dave Roberts flew out to Vegas. So if he's got this mega monster deal on hand, what's the holdup? Now, the reason I bring up the Dodgers is it's not likely the Dodgers can match the Phillies in money. So, in all likelihood, the way the Dodgers would have to be able to get him is to make him the highest, make more money than any other player in baseball, which that just got raised by Nolan Arenado making $32.5 million. How they're going to manage that, I don't know. I'm not the Dodgers bookkeeper, but I mean, that's your benchmark, man. As we record, the wild thing is it's February 26th as we record. Bryce Harper still ain't signed. Where he signs, I don't know. My likely guess is the Dodgers, simply because he likes the big stage. It's out in LA. It's not far from where he grew up in Vegas. He doesn't have to go far for spring training. It's essentially a home team for him.
Trying to wrap my head around all those numbers,
It's a lot.
that's insane.
Yeah.
Insane. And for Bryce Harper, I mean, okay, anybody that is paying 10 years on a contract, that is way too much. I mean, we've talked about this on the show before. You take a look at the history of 10-year contracts, they never pan out.
No.
You'll get a couple great years, sure. But if you look at the stretch of those, they usually come up back to bite them on the end. And, this is going to be another one with Machado. I don't know what's going to happen, but for $300 million and for somebody, I mean, for me...
He's very good. Let's not be...
He's very good.
He's very good.
But when you make public comments about not hustling and such like that he has, I mean, that's not the best thing I would be wanting to donate $300 million to.
Right, and it should be noted, Giancarlo Stanton still has the highest contract in Major League Baseball history at 13 years and $325 million. So like I said, Scott Boras wants the records. Either he's going to get the highest contract in Major League Baseball history, which means the Phillies are going to have to go north of 325, which I'm willing to bet if they want him bad enough, and there's been reports that they're very nervous that that they thought they had him locked up and now the Dodgers are going to sweep him out from under their feet. I'm willing to bet the Phillies are going to ready to open up the checkbook and write a stupid high number just to bring him in, or you're going to have the Dodgers sweep him out at the last minute and make him the highest, average salary for a player in baseball history, which would have to be north of $32.5 million.
For somebody that was rumored to be making $500 million, that I think if the Phillies try outbidding the Dodgers for it, I mean, you got to take a look long term. Is it really worth doing?
Yeah.
I think Harper would be a better fit with the Dodgers because if he's bringing this much headache, I mean, if you didn't want to go to Philly, I mean, why wait so long? They threw you a great contract. Right. You should jump on it. And, I mean, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Mike Trout if he wants to ever try coming to Philly too, because imagine that outfield if they ever put that together. Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know Trout's status. I think he's locked up a little longer in Anaheim than...
Well, and especially you look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers need Harper very much so than just an on-field aspect. You look at what that team's got. They lost Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp is gone. They were really heavy in trying to get the catcher JT Real Muto from the Florida Marlins. That didn't work out. Now you've got Clayton Kershaw getting shut down for the week and possibly getting an MRI after the week is said and over with. So who knows how long he's going to be out. And you're sitting there looking at the Dodgers like, we're not exactly giving fans a reason to show.
Right. So this one, I think he ultimately winds up with the Dodgers. And I think for Philly, you know what? If this doesn't pan out, I mean, you can go all in on some other players that are not going to be as much headaches because as it appears to be and a perception is reality, Harper doesn't want to play in Philly.
I'll say because he doesn't want to play in Philly. He's got the number isn't out there, but all reports are saying that it's north of $300 million. Why the holdup?
Yeah, exactly.
Like when the owner of the Phillies flies out to Vegas, I believe it was either Saturday or Sunday this past week. He flew out to Vegas to meet with Harper's team, and there was a lot of speculation that he was expecting to leave with a signed contract in hand, and he left empty-handed. And we're sitting here at the end of March. Ball games start, at the end of we're sitting here at the end of February. Excuse me. Ball games are going to start here before too long. Why are you waiting?
It's a multi-million-dollar question that I don't have an answer for because this is mind-boggling to me. I'm just happy the Yankees locked up Hicks for a good 7 years. So you know what? I'll take that any day of the week. But definitely the Bryce Harper saga continues. Coach, what you got to round those bases?
If you are as excited as I was to listen to a man complain about whether he wants to make $100 million or $10 million or $5 million, there's going to be guys working out in Spanx this weekend, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, boy.
The NFL Combine is back, and it's everybody's favorite. How much can you bench press? How fast can you sprint? And how high can you jump? And how big are Kyle Murray's hands?
Yes.
The questions that will be answered this weekend are pivotal.
And how fast will Rich Eisen run?
Yes, that is also
That's
the
what
big
I want to
thing.
know.
The big thing everybody's going to wonder. So, obviously, NFL Combine this weekend, NFL teams are going to gauge or sleep during this depending on who your GM is. So, it'll be interesting to see, the QBs are going to be probably the most talked about because really, Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, a lot of questions on who's going to go 1, 2, 3. So it'll be interesting to see who throws, who doesn't. I know that Murray has said that he was planning on throwing.
Okay.
So we'll see if he actually does or not. Haskins also said that he was planning on throwing, so that will be interesting. And we'll see where these guys land as far as, their 40 times in bench presses.
I'll say the interesting thing I saw the other day, and the name escapes me, but it was an offensive tackle, if I'm not mistaken, from Florida, who will not be participating in the NFL Combine this weekend as planned because he got a doctor's note. Who's the doctor, you may ask? Sports fans, you're going to cringe here. Dr. James Andrews.
That's not good.
That's not a good doctor's note.
That's not good.
It's never good, but you know what? The Combine brings so much to the draft because this can make or break somebody's draft status.
As wild as it is, yes, it can.
I mean, we've seen people that have had impressive running times at the draft move up into the first round.
I forget the guy, but a couple years ago, he set or tied the 40-yard dash record, and people like the draft quote-unquote experts were like, yeah, he just bumped his draft stock like 10, 15 places.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot going on with the Combine. It's one of the more intriguing things to watch as a sports fan because, like Coach Duffy was inquiring about, they're going to measure about hand sizes and just, like, the intangibles that we don't think about as fans because, for us, it's more about how you play on the field.
Yeah, for me, it's all about the quarterbacks throwing or not because this is not going to be, when they have their pro days, like Baker Mayfield last year, you go 22 of 23, but literally every single one of those throws is all scripted by guys that you've been working out with up until that point, almost like a dress rehearsal. Throwing at the Combine, though, you're throwing to 14, 15 wide receivers that you might not even know their names.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see the chemistry there. That really puts a test on your quarterback, development skills.
I believe it's going to be on the NFL Network all weekend.
All weekend.
So stay tuned for that. And I'm going to take us out. I touched upon this on the parlay points on the ODPH website, but it was announced George Rush St. Pierre has announced his retirement from MMA. And if you know anything about MMA, he is in the GOAT conversation. His run as a welterweight champion, unparalleled. He took on everybody. He implemented so much as a mixed martial artist. You don't want to even say a fighter. He was an artist in the cage.
Yes.
And like we touched upon a little bit, he was so dominant in his division, they were bringing in fighters from other organizations. Like Jake Shields was coming in, and I know they had a super fight with Nick Diaz. And he actually had one of the biggest super fights that is kind of forgotten about at this stage against BJ Penn.
Yep.
which, I mean, if you knew at that time period, that was so big in MMA. So obviously to see him retire, I mean, he went on a winning note. He defeated my favorite fighter, Michael Bisping, for the middleweight title as he stepped to 185. He hasn't fought since. Is he going to come back ever? You never say never, but obviously he's done his due, and he's going to have a great career. Whatever he does moving forward, he's going to be successful.
Absolutely. There are a couple fighters that I'd like to meet and like shake their hand and get a photo and autograph with, but I think top of the list has to be GSP, just because he was so dominant, he was so good at what he did, and he was also a class act about it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most professional people you'd ever meet in the cage, polite too.
Yeah, I mean, he transcended the sport at a time where, it was at its peak, and he was one of the guys that was carrying the ship. Him, Silva, and, Randy Couture and all those guys.
Yep.
He was right there on the cusp with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, when he came up, I mean, obviously there was a lot of hype behind him, and I know he had, the bad loss to Matt Serra for the Ultimate Fighter finale, and he came back and won. And he, got his belt back in dominant fashion, and just everybody he took apart too. I mean, I'll never forget the fight against Josh Koscheck, where he just outboxed him.
Yeah. I think
literally.
I think that was the first UFC MMA fight I ever watched, was him versus Josh Koscheck.
Yeah, and it was just brilliant just to see his fighting mind work.
It's kind of crazy to see that these guys that really got the UFC going, as far as being a household brand name, are all now leaving.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously you see some fighters are coming back, and I mean, obviously I've been very vocal about who I want to see come back and who I don't. And obviously GSP wanted to come back. He could, because he did take some time off before his fight against Bisping. But honestly, what's there at this stage for him? Sure, a fight against Habib would be nice. Him against Ben Askren would be something different, because that never happened. But obviously, and I don't want to hear anybody talk about him against Anderson Silva at this age.
No.
That super fight window is closed.
Closed, locked, and the keys thrown away.
I don't care how good Silva looked against Adesanya. I don't want to see that fight at this age. If we can get a time machine and do it, a good chunk of time ago, sure.
No, you know what? That's what the video game's for.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm perfectly fine doing it on there, because GSP has definitely carved his legacy in MMA. He's in the GOAT conversation for the rest of his life, and just, we wish him the best in retirement moving forward. And that's all we got for this week. So for Coach Duffy,
good night and good luck.
For Padawan J,
thank you.
I'm your host, Ken M. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. We'll see you next time.